The city cemetery buzzed with order on that crisp morning, black cars lining the roads, rows of uniformed soldiers, standing with white-gloved precision. It was the funeral of General Thomas J. Henley, a man whose name adorned bases and whose handshake graced presidents. Among the crowd, Frank Delaney, 86, stood apart. He lived alone in a second-floor apartment above a shuttered bakery where the rent was cheap and the heater rattled through winter. That morning, he woke before dawn, laying out his faded jacket with stiff collars and polished shoes. Not perfectly, but good enough. He pinned his medals to his chest, each one placed with care, as if they still held the weight of decades past. His sons, busy with lives out of state, didn't know he was going. He didn't want to fuss. Instead, he took the early bus, 29 stops, sitting by the window, hands folded, letting the rhythm of the ride steady him. Frank hadn't seen Tom in over 40 years, but some names never fade. They'd served together in the desert when Henley was a green second lieutenant and Frank, a seasoned sergeant, showed him how to drink slowly, aim steady, and trust his gut when maps failed. They weren't best friends, but brothers forged in dirt, sweat, and silence. Frank never bragged, never told war stories in bars. He went home, delivered mail, raised a family, buried a wife, and kept to himself. Tom rose to command thousands, his legacy etched in stone. Frank watched from afar, proud in his quiet way, never bitter. He didn't come to the funeral for attention. He came because it mattered. At the gate, a young officer stepped forward. "Sir, this section's for family and invited guests. Please step behind the ropes." Frank nodded, stepping back without argument, hands folded over his medals. No one asked who he was, no one offered a seat. He stood near a tree, eyes fixed on the flag-draped casket, unnoticed amid the tailored suits and clicking cameras. A woman whispered to her husband, "Who's that?" "Probably wandered in," he replied. Frank heard, but didn't react. It wasn't about being seen, it was about standing where he needed to, even if the world passed him by. He remembered the convoy like yesterday. Dust choked the air in northern Iraq, 7 vehicles snaking through a canyon. Henley was in the second Humvee. Frank rode up front, map in hand, rifle ready. No one expected contact. Then the first explosion thudded, low and deceptive. Smoke, sand, screams filled the air. Frank hit the ground running, crawling over glass and canvas to pull Henley from the wreckage. Blood poured from his leg, helmet lost. "Are we hit?" Henley gasped. Frank dragged him 20 feet to cover, shoving a magazine into his lap. "You're alive. Load up." They held for 17 minutes, Frank covering their angle, calling coordinates as 2 more rounds hit. They shared water from the same canteen, silent until the dust settled. Frank's shoulder bled through his sleeve. He never mentioned it. That was their bond. Not words, but survival. After the tour, their paths diverged. Henley's letters and promotions piled up. Frank's life settled into routine. One envelope arrived, a handwritten note. "I never got to say it properly, but I owe everything since that day to you." TJH Frank tugged it in his Bible, never sharing it. Now, as the honor guard adjusted their rifles and the band tuned up, he thought of that letter, the melted medal on his chest, a reminder of that day. The ceremony began. Speeches of valor and legacy flowed, but they weren't the Tom he knew. The Tom who cried over a dead private who wouldn't touch coffee for days after. That Tom never made the papers, but Frank carried him. The rifle volleys cracked, startling some guests. Frank didn't flinch. He'd heard worse. Taps played, heavy and familiar, As the flag was folded and presented to Henley's widow, Frank's chest tightened, not pride, but a quiet ache. Then, a black SUV rolled up. A 4-star general stepped out, General Mason, his blues adorned with ribbons. The crowd murmured, but he didn't head for the podium. He walked straight to Frank, stopping before the old man under the tree. Their eyes met, and Mason saluted, slow, firm, a salute that said more than words. Frank didn't return it. He didn't need to. The moment was truth. Mason turned to the crowd. Before General Henley wore his first star, he was led by Frank Delaney. If not for him, Henley wouldn't have lived to become anything at all. He placed a hand on Frank's shoulder. He pulled Henley from a burning convoy, held his leg together under fire, kept him alive while wounded himself. No medal was issued. He never told anyone until now. Whispers faded to silence. A young cadet who'd eyed Frank suspiciously earlier stepped forward, voice unsteady. "I didn't know, sir, but I do now." Frank shook his hand, eyes kind. "Remember who you stand next to when it counts." People rose, some saluting, some nodding, a quiet acknowledgement. Henley's daughter approached, tears in her eyes. "We never knew that story. Thank you for showing up." Frank smiled faintly. "Your father knew." That was enough. As the crowd thinned, Frank walked to the casket, slipping Henley's letter beneath the flag. "That's where it belongs," he murmured. General Mason offered a handshake. "This country owes you more than words can say." Frank met his gaze. "You served long enough. You learned some things matter more." The handshake was brief, final. Frank left the cemetery, the sun warming the pavement. He didn't look back. He'd come as a stranger, left remembered. He never asked for a seat, never sought attention, just stood to say goodbye. And that, for him and Tom, was enough. Have you stood for someone in silence? Comment below. Like, subscribe, and share with someone who values quiet honor.